Beruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Chof Zayin Amud Beis, 4 lines before the widest lines. Previously, the Gemara had told us when the Mishnah says Tfilas ha'erev ein la keva, it doesn't just mean to say that you can daven Mariv at all times of the night, because if it did so, all it should say then is Kol ha'erev. The fact that it says Tfilas ha'erev ein la keva also comes to imply that Tfilas ha'erev, meaning Mariv, is a reshus. In fact, it's a machloikis, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Yoshua says it's a reshus, but Rabbi Gamliel says that it's a choiva. Now the Gemara brings a maisa. Ton Rabbanon, maise betalmid echod sheba lifnei Rabbi Yoshua. There was a student that came before Rabbi Yoshua and he asked him the following: Omar le tfilas arvis reshus oy choiva? Omar le reshus. Rabbi Yoshua said it's a reshus. Bo lifnei Rabbi Gamliel, Omar le tfilas arvis reshus or choiva? Omar le choiva. The same Talmud came before Rabbi Gamliel and he asked him the same question: is tfilas arvis reshus or choiva? And Rabbi Gamliel said it's choiva. Omar le v'haloi Rabbi Yoshua Omar li reshus. Omar le hamtein achi kansu bale trisin lebeis hamedrash. He said, wait over here, he said to the student. And Rabbi Gamliel goes on to say that until the students, meaning the Balei Trisin, the shield bearers, referring to the Talmidei Chachamim, who wage war in Torah, who battle with each other in Limud HaTorah, until they enter the Beis HaMedrash. Keshekonsu Balei Trisin, Omad Hashoyel V'Shoal, Tfilas Arvis Reshus or Choiva. He had the student stand up and ask his question, is Tfilas Arvis a Reshus or is it a Choiva? Omar le Rabbi Gamliel choiva. He answered in front of everybody that it's a choiva. Omar lehem Rabbi Gamliel lechachomim klum yesh adam shecholek b'davar. He said in a big announcement, does anybody argue on this? Omar le Rabbi Yeshua lav. Rabbi Yeshua said no. Omar le v'haloi mishmecha amru li reshus. They said in your name, Rabbi Yeshua, that you said that Tfilas Arvis is a reshus. Omar le Yoshua almoid al raglecha vayidu bach. He told Rabbi Yeshua to stand on his feet in front of everybody. Omad Rabbi Yoshua al ragla v'omar ilmole ani chai v'hu meis yochel achai lahachish es ha-meis ve'achshav shani chai v'hu chai eich yochel hachai lahachish es ha-chai. If I was alive and he was not alive, then maybe I can deny and say that I did not argue and say that it's a reshus. But rather, I argue and said it's a reshus. But now that he's alive and I'm alive, how can I argue? How can I deny the fact that indeed I said that it's a reshus? Haya Rabbi Gamliel Yoshe v'doresh Rabbi Yoshua omed al raglov. Rabbi Gamliel the Nasi began to doresh a drasha in the Beis HaMedrash while Rabbi Yoshua was standing on his feet in front of everybody. Asheronu kol ha'am v'omu l'chutzpis haturgaman omoid. Until there was a murmuring amongst the Talmidim, amongst the Talmidei Chachamim present in the Beis HaMedrash, and they were then upset that Rabbi Yoshua was being discarded over here, having to stand on his feet during this drasha as an embarrassment to Rabbi Yoshua, and they told the Meturgaman, in those days they used to have a Meturgaman, that when somebody would give a drash, in this case Rabbi Gamliel, then they would have somebody who would have a loud voice to amplify what he is saying by saying it to the public, to say to the entire Beis HaMedrash. So they instructed the Meturgaman to stop the Omad, and he stopped being Metargem the drasha. Omre, they said, Ad kama nitzare v'nezel. How much will Rabbi Gamliel mitzarer him, Rabbi Yoshua, and continue to do this? Berosh Hashanah ishtake tzare. The previous year, Rosh Hashanah, it's referring to that when there was an edus that came in saying that they saw the moon, a new moon, on the 30th day. They didn't see it the night before. So Rabbi Gamliel said it's mekadesh the chodesh. However, Rabbi Yoshua argued, and Rabbi Yoshua said, no, you have to ma'aber the chodesh until the next day. And therefore, Rabbi Gamliel was mitzayer him. He required that he come on Yom Kippurim, together with his staff, and even though it would require him to be over a malacha on Yom Kippurim, but he was coming to prove to him that indeed he was wrong. And that was Mitzar Rabbi Yoshua very greatly. That was the previous year. And also there was a situation by Bechoros, B'maisa de Rabbi Tzadok Tzarei. There was a Maisa by Bechoros. Rabbi Tzadok was a Kohen, and he allowed his animal, the Bechor, to eat from a certain place where he got a mum by cutting its lip. So he was a Talmid Chacham, and he asked Rabbi Yoshua, is there a distinction between the owner being a Talmid Chacham or an Am Ha'aretz? And Rabbi Yoshua said there is a distinction. But Rabbi Gamliel said no, there's no difference between a Talmid Chacham and an Am Ha'aretz in regards to allowing his Bechor to eat from this type of place where he can get a mum easily. And therefore there was another machlokes, and he was in Tsar Rabbi Yoshua there as well. So Hachanami Tzare, now also he's Mitzar the third time. So these are what the Talmidim were saying in the Beis HaMedrash. Ton v'na'avre. Let's come and remove Rabbi Gamliel from his status as being the one who is the Rosh Hashiva, as the Nasi here. Man nukim le. So who should we then appoint in his place? Nuk me Rabbi Yoshua Bal Maisahu. To then establish Rabbi Yoshua to be the Rosh Hashiva, well, he's the one who's involved in the Maisa. That would not be appropriate. Nuk me Rabbi Akiva Dilma Onishle Diles Le Zechus Avois. Maybe he will be punished by Rabbi Gamliel since he doesn't have Zechus Avois. Ella Nuk me Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Dehu Chacham, Vehu Oshir, Vehu Asiri LeEzra. He's also a Chacham, and he's an Oshir, and he also has good Yichus. Because if they would ask on him a question, he'll be able to answer because he's a chacham. He's a oshir, and therefore he has the capacity to then stick up and argue and discuss matters with the Beis HaKesar on behalf of Klal Yisrael. And he's also the 10th generation from Ezra HaSofer, the Islay Zechus Avois, V'lomati Inashlem. Because he has Zechus Avois, he can't be punished by Rabbi Gamliel. So let's appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Osu v'amrulei, Nichalei lamad lahavi Beis Mesivta. They went to ask Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah if he was going to then allow us to appoint him to be the Rosh Mesivta, the Rosh Yeshiva. Omar Lahu, he said to them, let me go ask my household, my wife. He went and he took counsel with his wife about whether he should be then the next Rosh Yeshiva. She said to him, Dilma ma'avrin loch, maybe they will also remove you from your position, just like they're removing Rabbi Gamliel. Omar lo, he said to her, Lishtamesh inish yoyma chade bekased de moikro ulamacha litvaber. There's a saying that goes that let them use an expensive glass cup, and even if it breaks afterwards, it breaks. Meaning to say, let them appoint me, and if something happens in the future, so something will happen. I'll lose my position. Omrole, she said to him, Leslach chivarta. You don't have any white in your beard. You're too young. Hahu yoima bar tamni, sorry, shnihava. That at that time he was 18 years old. Bar timni sorry shana hava. He was only 18 years old. Israchish le niso vahadru le timni sorry dari chivarta. There was a nace that occurred, and 18 rows of white appeared in his beard. Hainu de Kama Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. This is what Rabbi Elazar meant when he said at the end of the first parak, the last Mishnah there. Hare ani keben shivim shana, velo ben shivim shana. I'm like a 70-year-old man. He was really only 18 years old, but a nace occurred that he appeared to be like a 70-year-old man because he had 18 rows of white in his beard. Tana oisa hayom salku l'shomer haPesach. That day they removed the shomer from the Pesach of the Beis HaMedrash. V'nosna lahem reshus letalmidim likonis. And they allowed the Talmidim to then enter the Beis HaMedrash. Shahai Rabbi Gamliel Machriz v'oimer kol talmid she'en toichoy keboroi lo yikanes lebeis hamedrash. Because when Rabbi Gamliel was in charge, he did not allow people who were genuine, who didn't have their insides that matched their outsides, and therefore he didn't allow them into the Beis HaMedrash. Hahu yoima isvasvu kama safsoli. That day many benches were added in the Beis HaMedrash. Rabbi Yochanan pligi bo Abba Yosef ben Dustoi v'Rabbanan. Chad amar isvasvu arba meya safsoli. V'chad amar sheva meya safsoli. It's a machlokes whether it was 400 or 700 extra benches that they added that day when they removed the shomer. This calls the Chalishus Hadas. When Rabbi Gamliel saw how many additional loimdim came to the Beis HaMedrash to learn Torah. Omar, he said, Dilma chas v'sholem mena'ati Torah mi-Yisrael. Maybe chas v'sholem, I caused people to learn less in Klal Yisrael. I inhibited those who were able to learn Torah from Klal Yisrael. They showed him in a dream that there were certain barrels or jugs rather that were white, but they had in it plain ashes, meaning to say it was an expensive vessel on the outside, but that which was on the inside was really worthless, and therefore that container of a vessel which was so precious was containing something that was not precious. And therefore similarly over here they're showing him that these people, these Talmidim that were entering the Beis HaMedrash, they didn't have Toicha Kabara like he was adamant that he was makbid not to allow in. And therefore they were showing him that he was correct. However, says the Gemara, Velohi, this was not so. They only showed him in the dream only because they wanted to miyashiv his das. But really, in truth, these were Talmidim that were then prepared to learn Torah. And they were correct in doing so. And he was makbid that they shouldn't come in because he thought, Ein toicha keboroi. He was too strict. Tana, the Gemara brings, Eidios bo b'yom nishnis. That day they were learning Eidios. V'chol heicha da'amrinam bo b'yomahu yoima hava. And whatever they learned that day, that was indeed the halacha. V'l'haisa halacha sha'isa tluya beis hamedrash lo pirshua. There wasn't a single halacha that was taught during that day that was not explained. Ve'afram Gamliel lo mana atzm beis hamedrash afilu sho achas. And even Gamliel was there the entire day in the Beis HaMedrash as they were learning all of these halachos. This nan, as it says in the Mishnah, Boi ba'yoim ba Yehuda ger amoini lifneim bebeis HaMedrash. On that day, Yehuda, the ger amoini, came to the Beis HaMedrash and he asked, Omar lahem, ma'ani lavod b'kahal, can I go ahead and marry into the kahal, into Klal Yisrael? Omar le Ram Gamliel, osar ata lavod b'kahal. You're not allowed to lavod l'kahal, you're amoini. Omar le Rabbi Yoshua, mutar ata lavod b'kahal, you're allowed to do so. Omar le Gamliel v'halok kvar ne'emar, doesn't it state in the pasuk, lo yavo amoini u'moyavi b'kahal Hashem, that a amoini, as well as a moyavi, cannot come and enter the Kahal Hashem by marrying into Klal Yisrael. Omar le Rabbi Yoshua v'chi Amon u'Moyav v'mekoymon hen yoshvim. Is Amon and Moyav in the same place, in the original place where they were, that we should know that this Yehuda, who says he's from Amon, is truly an Amoini? Kvar ola Sancherev melech Ashur u'bilbol es kol ha'umois. The king of Ashur, Sancherev, he already mixed up all of the nations. Shenema states, "V'asir gvulos amim," I have removed the borders of the nations, says Sancherev. V'asu doseim shoiseisi, and I have plundered their treasures. V'orid ka'abir yoshvim, and I brought down the dwellers into a stronghold. And the Gemara says there's a klal. They call the parish merua parish. When all of the people, right, they leave a certain place, we have a klal, you go after the rov. And since there are different people, different nations that are now in the area of Ammon, therefore we go after the rov, which is other nations and not the original Ammonim. So therefore, Rabbi Yoshua argues that this Yehuda, who's a ger from Ammon, is not truly from Ammon, and therefore can rely on the fact that he's from one of the other nations. However, it states already, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that I will return the captives of the people of Ammon. Ukvar shavu, and they already returned. But says in a different pasuk, V'shavti eshvus ami Yisrael. V'adayin lo shavu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will return the captives of my nation Yisrael, and they haven't yet returned. It's going to be le'osi lavoy. So we see that also is true when it comes to the Ammonim. Miyad hitiru lavoy bekal. Immediately they allowed Yehuda the Ammoni to come into the kahal. Omer Rav Gamliel, hoyel v'hochi hava ozil v'afaisi l'Rabbi Yoshua. Since this is true, and they sided with Rabbi Yoshua, I see that he is right, and therefore Rav Gamliel wanted to be moide ala emes. He was so truthful that he said, if that's the case, let me go and mefayes Rabbi Yoshua and ask him for forgiveness. Kimata lebeisei. When he came to his house, Chazinu li'ishisa devesi demashcharon. He saw that the walls were blackened, were charcoaled. Omarle mikoisla beisecho ataniker shifchami ato. From the walls of your house, it appears that you are somebody who is involved with charcoal, that you're somebody who's a blacksmith. Omarle oy loy ledosha ata parnosoi. Woe is the generation that you are its leader. After all, Rav Gamliel was a wealthy person. He was a nasi, and he didn't have the sensitivity to see what was going on in Klal Yisrael, all of the poverty that people were struggling with. She'iyata yodeh b'tzayin shel talmidei chachamim b'amehem misparnesim b'amehem nizoinim. You don't see the anguish, the pain of the talmidei chachamim who are struggling to make parnasa. Omar loy ne'enesi. L'cho, machali, please forgive me for what I did to you. Loi eshkach bei, it says Rabbi Yeshua did not pay attention to him. Also, bishvil kvod Abba, but do it at least for the kavod of Abba, either his own father, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who was one of the Asar Harugim, or refers to a grandfather, Hillel Hazaken, was the Nasi, the first Nasi, Fies, and therefore he was appeased. Rabbi Yeshua was appeased by Rabbi Gamliel. Omru, they said, Man nezel v'leimelu rabban. Who will go and tell the Rabban in the Beis HaMedrash that this is now the case, that Rabbi Yeshua was mefuyas, and he then forgave Rabbi Gamliel and wants to reinstate him to be the Rosh Yeshiva. Omar lohu hahu koives ana azilna. A certain laundryman volunteered that he will go to the Beis HaMedrash and tell everybody that Rabbi Yeshua is masking, he agrees that Rabbi Gamliel can be reinstated as the Rosh Yeshiva. Sholach lu Rabbi Yeshua lebei Midrasha. Rabbi Yeshua sent in the Beis HaMedrash with the following message: Man de lovish mada yilbash mada. The one who was wearing the cloak, referring to Rabbi Gamliel, let him continue to wear the cloak. Uman de loy lovish mada yemar lei leman de lovish mada. Sholach mada va'ana albashe. And the one who was not wearing the cloak, will he say to the one who was wearing the cloak to then remove his cloak? Therefore, he's saying the message is clearly that how can I, Rabbi Yoshua, then remove Rabbi Gamliel from his position? He should continue in his position as Rosh Yeshiva. Omar lu Rabbi Akiva Rabbanon. Rabbi Akiva said the Rabbanon, Truki Gali. It means they didn't accept the message that they got from this laundryman in the name of Rabbi Yoshua. And therefore they said, Truki Gali, close the gates. That the servants of Rabbi Gamliel should not run in and cause pain to the students here in the Beis HaMedrash. Rabbi Yoshua, mutav de ikum ve'izil ana legabai. Better that I should go myself in person to deliver this message. Also, Tarv Abava, he came and he knocked on the door, on the gate. Omar lehu, and he said to them, all of the Talmidei Chachamim in the Beis HaMedrash, Maze ben Maze Yazeh, referring to Rabbi Gamliel, the one who sprinkles, he should continue to sprinkle. V'she'eno lo Maze v'lo ben Maze, Yom lo Maze ben Maze, meimecha ma'ara ve'afrecha ve'efrecha efer makle. And the one who is not the one who sprinkles, meaning me, Rabbi Yoshua, who's not a son of somebody who sprinkles, should he then say to the one who sprinkles, your water is not sufficient, and it has aether, it has ashes that also are not appropriate to sprinkle? In other words, he's saying that a reference to Rabban Gamliel as if he's the Kohen over here. And just as the Kohen sprinkles, right, he should continue to sprinkle. Me, I'm not a Kohen, and therefore my father's not a Kohen. It's not appropriate for take the job, so to speak, the Nesius, the Rosh Yeshiva, in place of Rabban Gamliel. Omar Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yeshua, Nispayasta. Rabbi Yeshua, you are mefuyas, you are appeased. We only did this because of your own kavod, your own glory. Tomorrow you and I will wake up early and go to the Pesach Rabban Gamliel. Omre, they said, Heichi na'avid. What should we do? They were discussing amongst themselves, how should we handle the future of the Beis HaMedrash? How should we handle it? Navre, to remove Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah completely from his now position. We have a Masora, Gemiri Ma'alin Bekodesh Ve'maridin. When you bring somebody up in a position, we have Ma'alin because we don't take him down. Nidrosh Mar Chadashabto Asli. In order to then switch off and have Rabban Gamliel say a drasha for 1 week, and say Rabbi Yeshua says a drasha the other week, and take turns, that will cause kina amongst them. Ella lidrosh Rabban Gamliel tlosa shabti, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah chada shabto. Rather, we should have Rabban Gamliel daresh 3 weeks out of the month, and Rabbi Yeshua 1 of the weeks. V'hainu domar mar shabbos shel mi haisa. Whose week is this? Shel Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah haisa. And he said it was Rabbi Shimon Elazar bar haisa. So we have, this was done indeed, that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah 1 week out of the month was the one who was daresh. The Oysa Talmud, the Gemara adds, that Talmud that began the whole discussion, who first went to Rabbi Yoshua and asked him, what is the din by Arvis? Is it Rishus or Choiva? And he went to Rabbi Gamliel and he asked, is it Rishus or Choiva? Who was that Talmud? Says the Gemara, it was none other than Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Hava. Says the Gemara, Vishal Musafin Kol Hayoim. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah that says, Musaf can be made all day long. And over here it says, Kol Hayom, doesn't say, like it says by Mincha Ad HaErev, because Mincha can only be from 6.5 hours until the Shkia, until the Erev. But Musaf can be done all day long, even including the morning. However, if he pushes it off late in davening Musaf, and he waits till the afternoon to daven Musaf, so then he's called a Posheya, says Rabbi Yochanan. Ton Rabbanan, the Gemara brings a brayso. Hoyu lefonav shtei tfilos. Acha shel mincha v'acha shel musaf. Mispala shel mincha v'achaka mispala shel musaf. Shezu tedira v'zu eina tedira. If you have a situation where musaf and mincha are coinciding, so according to this opinion, you daven mincha before musaf because we have a concept of tadir. V'she'eno tadir kodem. Since mincha is davened regularly every single day, whereas musaf is only davened on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Yomim Tovim, on Moyadim, therefore mincha takes precedence over the musaf. Rabbi Yehuda oimer mispala shel musaf v'achar mispala shel mincha shezu mitzvah oiveres v'zu mitzvah she'en overes. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that musaf can only be davened until the 7th hour, and therefore he says daven musaf if it coincides with mincha first, because musaf can only be davened for the next period of time, that next half an hour until the end of the 7th hour, whereas mincha be davened ad ha'erev. Om Rabbi Yochanan halacha mispal shel mincha ve'achaka mispal shel musaf. The halacha is like the Tana Kama, the Chachamim, who say you daven first mincha and then you daven musaf. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zira ki hava cholish megirsei. When he was tired from his learning, he didn't want to just sit back and relax. He wanted to then chaparayin, as you would say, and grab other mitzvahs. So what did he do? He would sit by the doorway of the Beis HaMedrash of Rabbi Nosson bar Tuvi. Omar, and he said, Ki chalfei rabbanon, as Ikum mekamayu ve'kabel agro. When the Rabbanon will leave the Beis HaMedrash or enter the Beis HaMedrash, I'll be able to then stand up for them when they're in my Daled Amos, and I'll get schar. Nofok also Rabbi Yonasan Bar Tuvi. Rabbi Yonasan Bar Tuvi came out. Omar lei. So Rabbi Zira said to him, Man Omar halacha be'midrasha. Who says that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in the Beis HaMedrash? Omar lei hachi Omar Yochanan. They said it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Ein halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda when you have mincha and musaf that coincide. The Omar mispalel adam shel musaf v'achar mispalel shel mincha. Right? Because Rabbi Yehuda is the opinion that you daven musaf first, but the halacha is not like him. Omar Rabbi Yochanan Amra. He said to him, does Rabbi Yochanan, he's the one who said this halacha? Omar le'in. He told him, yes, indeed. Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. It's like the Chachamim, that you would daven mincha before the musaf. Tana minei arboin zimnin. He learned this over, he said, 40 times. He reviewed it again and again, this halacha in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Omar lei. So Rabbi Yonasan Bar Tuvi said to Rabbi Zira, Chade hiloch or Chadit hiloch? Is it the first time that you heard a halacha in the name of Rabbi Yochanan? Right? Or is it Chade hiloch or Chadit hiloch? Or is it the first time that you heard that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan? In other words, did you think that is Chade hiloch, that it was one time that you learned the halacha in Rabbi Yochanan's name? Or is it Chadit hiloch that was nischadesh to you that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan and not like somebody else? So he answered back, Omarle Chadit hili. It was something new to me. I thought somebody else said this halacha differently, and therefore I went and reviewed it 40 times. Misum this misafkali. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. I thought Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said this halacha, and therefore I repeat it again 40 times in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Kol hamispalot tefila shel musafin la'achar sheva shos l'Rabbi Yehuda olav hakosiv oimer nugei memoyed asafti mimech hoyu. He said a person davens musaf after the 7th hour, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So the pasuk says upon him that somebody who makes his tefillos late, he becomes somebody who is broken. My mashra dahai nugi lishna detavrahu. How's it mashra? The word nugi refers to somebody who's broken. That means something that's shoiver. Says the Gemara, the Mitargem Rav Yosef Tavra Asi al Sonei in the Beis Yisrael, breaking on those who are the enemies of Yisrael. It's a way of saying when we say something ra, bad against Yisrael, we say Soneim the Beis Yisrael. Al de achru zamni beudaya de Bishalayim. When they pushed off the Moadim of Yerushalayim, referring to those who were pushing off the right times, they were considered to be then, they'll break. Omer Rabbi Elazar kal mispalel tefila shel shacharis la'achar arba shos l'Rabbi Yehuda. Those who daven after the 4th hour, like the halacha is according to Rabbi Yehuda by shacharis, you can only daven shacharis till the end of the 4th hour, and they are not careful with that. Olav hakasuv oimer nugei mimoy asafti mimoch hoyu. My mashma, the high nugi loshna lishna tsarahu. How do we know that the loshna of nugi also refers to tsar, to pain? And by the way, here it says pain before we said that refers to breakage, because musaf cannot be repeated. If a person went and he missed musaf, and now it's mariv, let's say, it's after the shkia and he missed musaf, you can't make tashlumim on musaf. But over here, if a person did not daven shacharis, so he can daven shacharis later. If not before the chatzos, he can even daven tashlumin at the time of mincha. So it's only considered to be a tsar, not a shoiver, not a breakage. Now we bring a proof. How do we know it's a lashon of tsar? Dirsiv dolfa nafshi mituga. It says my soul drips from pain. So we have the idea of tuga as a reference to pain. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar mehochav, different pasuk. Bisulosea noigois v'himar lo, said that the besoloseh, the maidens, they are in pain, they're afflicted. V'himar lo, and she is embittered.